economy, they have difficulty finding skilled people. But you have to be lucky enough to be in some of those towns where that's still the case. And for the most part, it's a scary thing to lose your job. I think you can't. The organization needs to be transparent about what they're trying to accomplish here. And if one of the things that they are trying to accomplish is reducing headcount, then there's going to need to be some very careful management of how this is done. And this is, certainly, you're now getting into this organizational psychology thing, and I'm not an organizational psychologist by any means, but I've seen the ramifications of this not being managed well, the psychological dynamics not being managed well, and they are, as you point out, Alhem, severe. So I think that there is, we have seen in situations clients that didn't do this with adequate thought to how demoralizing and potentially even self-destructive doing this would be because of people, having fear, negativity, and pushback. It's probably, like a lot of things, a good idea if you're going to introduce outsourcing and it's an organization that hasn't done it at all, to actually look at doing it in a staged kind of way and sort of ease yourself into it. And that, of course, is going to help manage the impact on the people there because it will be more limited to start with. And if there's going to be reductions in staff, then that can be managed over time in a more gradual way, and that certainly could help. But yeah, I think this is a good point, El. I mean, you do need to make sure that management is properly on top of it. And if you're in a company and you see this is about to happen and management is not on top of it, I think you need to be, if you're a test manager, say, you need to be ready to manage within your organization and try to make sure that your test team knows what's going on. And and it's important that if you don't know, you say you don't know. If people ask you the question, is this outsourcing going to result in a reduction in force or the layoff, and if you don't know the answer to that question, it would be better to say I don't know than to lie and make something up and then get caught at it later. Okay, a question from Hina. What exactly do you mean by the term test environment? Well, the test environment would be all of the stuff that you use for testing other than the system under test, which is the test object or the target of the testing, and what I refer to as the test system, which would include the test cases, the test data, the tools, automated tools, and so forth. Now, admittedly, there's a fuzzy line between a test environment and test system, but I think that line is drawn where you say that the test environment it should be either what will actually be in the production environment or stuff that's there to simulate something that is not in the test environment but will be in the production environment versus the test system, which is stuff that really has no business in the production environment and is not necessarily simulating something that would be in there. Okay, another question from Lucian here. When talking about logistics, one difficulty is that sometimes, especially in embedded systems, replicating bug reports will be difficult for the development organization. Indeed. Do you think in such cases having a resident engineer from the development organization to the sys-test organization is a good idea? Would it be cheaper? Especially in crisis times, business trips are difficult to justify. The way I've seen this managed effectively in the past is you actually pick an outsourced test provider that is in the same town, within driving distance, basically, of the outsourced development organization. And this should not be terribly hard to do because I think in most places where you would find a lot of high-tech development centers, you could also find somebody who would a testing service provider who could be trusted. And you have the test environment available to outsource testing service provider. If they have a problem, then somebody comes over from the development organization and takes a look at it. And I've seen that approach work really well. And it helps solve one of the problems that can happen if, referring back to this slide here that's up on the screen, if the what's shown as outsourced testing organization here is done in-house, if that's a long way away, as you rightly point out, that can be really troublesome in terms of trying to replicate these bugs. So, that right there is a good reason to think about why have an outsourced testing organization. The question from Patricia, good to hear from you again, Patricia. From your experience, what are the most important characteristics that a good test partner must have? This is really going to depend. Obviously, one of the universals here is proper skills in the test team, and that's going to vary depending on what specifically you're testing, what those skills would be. But you would definitely want to see skilled, trained, experienced testers. If the test partner is embedded in a larger development organization, then you want to make sure that there is a career path that exists that is something that promotes test professionalism. You want to make sure that it's going to be possible to get a good environment, good test environment for them, either whether through VPN, in which case there's infrastructure question there of, is it reliable internet connectivity at high speed, or can we get the hardware to them? And this is another route that you can go, but it can be expensive. If they're going to be doing automation, you look at tools licenses and those kinds of things. So what you really want to do is say, what would we need to do this testing well ourselves, and then ask yourself, have a checklist of does the test partner have this? Question from Brian, what are the most effective methods to bring the outsourced testing organization up to speed on domain knowledge of the company and application that they are testing? This is important as a lot of the testing involves interpreting the results. Yes, Brian, that's a very good question, and the complexity of your application drives the degree to which this becomes a challenge. And one of the approaches that you can use for this is to try to carve up the work and outsource the work that is less domain dependent. Things like usability, accessibility, performance and reliability, localization. Those are things that we found that can be divided up fairly easily with less domain knowledge. If you do have to do functional testing, then the more domain knowledge there is, the longer it's going to take. And this is going to basically be an investment in this outsourced testing organization and their skills. Now, there's no magic bullets to make this happen. There's webinars and having people work side by side with them, and having the outsourced test provider send over a local person and so forth. So all these are things that can happen. One of the things that you'll want to do in a situation like this is make sure that your contract specifies some responsibility for a stable team at the outsourced test provider's side, because otherwise you're going to have their turnover costs will end up being imposed on you as people rotate out. So you'll want to be careful with that. Well, thank you all for your participation. That's all the time we have for questions. But I'm going to close this session and tell you a little bit more about the resources available through RBCS. We do plan to run these free webinar sessions. This is the second one. We're going to do it once a month. So check our website to sign up. And if you want a special webinar presentation for your company only of this webinar or any other topic, send us an email at info@rbcs-us.com or via the website, and we can talk about